What's up, everyone? Today I wanted to talk to you about Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, which I had the pleasure of seeing during the weekend, and it wasn't too bad. It was actually pretty good. It was also, yeah, I mean, like it was very middling in a lot of different places, but like the places where they counted the most actually did hit, and they hit pretty hard. So I was actually quite happy with how it turned out. So just before I go into the movie, I just want to let y'all know. Full disclaimer: I saw out of the MonsterVerse movies, got to see Godzilla and Kong Skull Island. I did not get to see Godzilla King of the Monsters or Godzilla versus Kong yet, so I haven't had a chance to see those two. But so I think that my opinion might get blunted a little bit, but just go in here knowing that I have not seen those two movies. So essentially, um, like this movie actually follows the events of those two movies, which I will go see, hopefully soon. But a- but I but I guess the story does center around Monarch, the agency, the global agency who is overseeing like the movements of different kaiju's and for whatever purposes. So like the human plot elements had not necessarily been all that great. I think going back, Kong Skull Island probably had the best like human characterizations. And it made sense because it became like a match between the humans and Kong himself. Whereas in Godzilla, it was about there was a Godzilla was more of a was more of a threat and was actually very threatening. People did die in that movie. And lots of people die in this one, of course, because unfortunately that is the consequence of kaiju battles in civilizations. So other than that, but that is expected in these kinds of movies. Yeah. So anyway, never mind about that. The focus really is on is on Godzilla and King Kong. So Godzilla is now like living at at the surface of the earth, and he wanders wherever he needs to, whether he's powering himself up or if he's just looking for a place to like kind of lay low and just relax. Whereas Kong now lives in Hollow Earth. So this is where his world happens to be, where he now like has he's it's basically like his new habitat, following the events of the last several movies, I guess, which I still need to go see. So I don't know how much knowledge I have, but I remember him being in Skull Island. Now he's in Hollow Earth, so I need to figure out I need to go see like where exactly how he ended up in Hollow Earth, or if it's just basically Skull Island. But anyway, so in this movie, Kong is actually just looking for his place because he's been essentially left being lonely at the start of this movie. So he doesn't have any companions. He's got no one to call his own civilization, his people, or whatever. And so yeah, I guess and then he looks around for that. So and you know, while Kong is out exploring, like his wild surroundings, eventually befriending a new little friend. I think like the new friend's name is Suko. The little Kong, not King Kong's child, but like a mini Kong. Nonetheless. Well, maybe not. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So Kong finally finds a purpose, but he also goes into conflict with the Scar King, and that's basically the premise for that's the spoiler free premise for Kong's story. Now, as for Godzilla, Godzilla actually ends up playing a much more of a supporting role because the focus is on Kong this time around. So Godzilla, somehow get something sets off in Godzilla, and then Godzilla is basically going to go on a tear to eventually like power up and then get ready for some sort of a big conflict. Not sure what's going on with Godzilla, but we just simply know that Godzilla is out, going to be out like yeah, figuring out ways how to power himself up so that he can take on the fight that ends up happening towards the end of the movie, which I think turns out to be very freaking fantastic. It's just a shame that like he didn't get a larger of a role, but at least the parts that he gets to have end up being really good. So that's Godzilla and Kong, and that's essentially that's all I can really say without going to spoilers. So let's go ahead and move on to the humans. So the humans are kind of a mixed bag. I did enjoy the mother and the adopted daughter dynamic. So the mother character. So let's take a look here. So she apparently, I guess she was like in previous movies after Kong Skull Island, so essentially present day Monarch. So Rebecca Hall is the doctor and who has adopted the little Iwi. She's basically deaf mute, but she can sign with her, and yeah. So I believe that the little Iwi girl's name is Gia, and essentially like she ends up like having drawing these like weird waves like at school and at home everywhere, and she just keeps on getting distracted, and she and then eventually like like the I think like Rebecca, the doctor, Dr. Andrews ends up having to go to a ends up going to a like a conspiracy theorist, he's basically like I guess like he's a shock DJ, who's basically like screaming about monsters, which at this point I guess like because people know about the existence of different monsters, like really it's kind of weird, but okay, cool. I'll roll with it that he is this like shock jock, because like I usually see that they spout out a lot of like far-fetched things, but okay, whatever. Anyway, he's okay. I mean like when he's not so the shock DJ is like played by Brian Tyree Henry. Feel free to correct me if I actually get his profession wrong. I mean, I just saw that he's like basically like not live streaming audio, like live podcasting about conspiracies about monsters or whatever. So I guess I have to go see the past movies just to like get a complete picture of like who he is. But he's okay. I mean, like the humor, like the parts where he tries to force humor, really did not really like resonate with me. And I but when he's acting, when he's like bonding with the other like human characters, particularly with Trapper, who I thought was really great. I thought the Trapper character by Dan Stevens, he actually turned out to be a really cool dude. I appreciated that, like a veterinarian character. I'll get back into him. So let's roll back to Bernie, the DJ guy. But yeah, so the interactions between the humans are actually okay. They're pretty decent, and he actually shows a fair amount of respect for like for like his fellow human colleagues. So I'll get into that a bit more. But let's just say like could probably like probably tone down the amount of like erraticism, but I did like his personality overall. So yeah. Anyway, towards the end, the big conflict happens when they eventually have to take on the Scar King, and then big fight happens, and well, yeah, look at that. Yeah, and the fight actually turns out to be pretty cool. The special effects in here are particularly awesome. I did enjoy some of the effects, particularly when the environment starts to change a little bit. And yeah, there's actually some like actual conflict, although being that this is a Godzilla and Kong movie, you kind of see like how it ends. It's just a matter, it's just a matter of like how what directions do they take with this. And at the end of the day, it's actually a pretty decent like monster kaiju battle movie, which if they had more of, I would totally go out and see it again. But I think like one, maybe two viewings is enough. But I hope that this movie actually ends up like getting a sequel, because what's really impressive about the movie is the communication between the different between the different animal species. I mean, there's actually some communication without actually having to speak English. Instead, you actually get some semblance of like what they're saying and they're thinking through their like through other forms of communication. And like you don't need to necessarily speak a specific language. You just have to like express yourself. And I'll get into that again. I'll get into that in spoilers. But anyway, if I had to rate this movie, I'd probably give this about a. I don't do half points, so I would probably. If I were to do half points, I'd probably give it a 7.5. But because it's not because I want to actually like be definitive about my decisions, I would probably actually round it down to a 7. If I have to give it a half point, and it's just basically something that I probably would only see like once or twice, then I would round it down to a 7. If it turned out to be something I end up seeing like I say like I would want to see this again like 3 or more times, then I would probably round it up. But this time, Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire gets a 7 out of 10 for me. So that's that for my review. So if you want to keep watching, if you would like to, feel free to stay tuned for the spoilers. Otherwise, thank you so much. And if you like what you saw here, please do like the video, comment on what you enjoyed, what you didn't enjoy. If you want to see more awesome content like this, then kindly consider like subscribing to my channel and hitting that notification bell. All right, thank you very much, and hang loose. Okay, moving on to the spoilers. Here we go. So anyway, so like the main plot thread is that it is centered around Kong. So Kong is the center of attention. So so despite the title Godzilla versus Godzilla X Kong, actually it's Kong that that ends up getting first billing in terms of like story. So the story, like this is a personal story about Kong, and Godzilla is basically the supporting character who is working to charge himself up. So let's talk about Godzilla for a little bit, because he is the primary character in the title. So Godzilla gets some sort of a signal, get some sort of a feeling basically a signal. And he is like, now he's decided like to wake up from his slumber in a Colosseum in Rome. And he's making his way to, many different sources of nuclear energy. That's really what he's chasing after. So it's pretty cool. He ends up getting into a battle in France against forces who are guarding the nuclear reactor there. So Godzilla rips and tears through many different cities, and then he eventually finds his way to the nuclear reactors. He's absorbing the nuclear, and then he is essentially like downing all the human forces. So it's, in that sense, I think that was actually pretty cool. It kind of reminded me of Rampage a little bit, or like the older like Godzilla games that were not. I mean, they could have gone a lot better, but I mean, this is very, very iconic of Godzilla taking on humans to achieve his own objectives. He's basically powering up, and it's like it feels very arcadey. That that Godzilla is just like charging himself up, and then he doesn't need to evolve, but he just needs to like prepare himself for the more important battles ahead. So essentially he's absorbed nuclear energy so that he can take on other other titans or basically other kaijus. I guess they call them titans, but like I would think of them as kaijus. So the one of the more interesting battles is Tiamat. He's made into like I think he's like Antarctica or some sort of like some polar country, polar ice country, where he ends up getting into a fight with Tiamat. Basically, it's not even a fight. It's just basically a slaughter. So only thing was like when he fires off his atomic breath in that battle. You don't really see it. You don't really see like the carnage. Like you don't see Tiamat getting ripped into chopped into pieces with the atomic breath. But you do see like the aftermath. So Tiamat's corpse is basically floating up to the top of the water in in pieces, and then Godzilla is absorbing whatever energy that Tiamat was storing in his lab. So I thought that was actually quite cool. So yeah, and so so essentially like Godzilla will. And that's basically where we're gonna go ahead and press pause on Godzilla, because now we're gonna move on to Kong. So Kong's fights off a bunch of like denizens like all over the like Hollow Earth, which is basically a forested jungle, and he fights off a lot of fights off a rival pack of apes or gorillas. So I think like but he single-handedly wins, and then he ends up meeting the little like beast known I think it's Suko. It was I think I did say Suko earlier, so that's my bad. But there's a lot to kind of get off my mind, but because I thought this movie was good enough that it was worth talking about. So eventually like Kong and Suko end up like meeting a new like a civilization, basically his own kind of apes, and then he ends up like butting heads with a rival army known at led by King Scar, Scar King. So the Scar King is just some agile. I guess he's an ape as well. He's very skinny, but he is agile, and he uses a very he uses a whip, and he's got basically like a crystal that controls like an ice beast known as Shimo. Although I would have thought that the beast's name would have been Shiva, because I do remember Shiva being used as the name of any sort of like ice base mythical creature, and it's like in past games that I've played, but probably have no relevance to King Kong or Godzilla. So okay, that's cool. And then so essentially King Kong, he can take on the Scar King pretty easily, but then he can't take on Shimo. Basically he is critically injured, so it's up to the humans who eventually make it to Hollow Earth, and then they eventually reach the Iwi tribe. Basically like a tribe, like a civilization that was thought to be extinct, because they had previous conflicts against the Scar King, and but turns out that they are still alive and well, and that Gia is able to actually talk with them, and so she's able to communicate with them, and then eventually the humans, the other three human characters. So at this point, it's the doctor, her mother basically, and then there's Trapper, and then there is Bernie, the DJ guy. So or radio jockey. I'll have to go see the previous couple of movies just to see like where he fits in that. But anyway, even like the both parties end up like working together to try to awaken probably one of the greatest greater like kaijus in this universe, Mothra. So who I guess had previously fought in Godzilla King of the Monsters, and then Mothra I guess was defeated as well. But here Mothra is back, and like Jia turned out to be the key to being able to awaken Mothra, so that Mothra can eventually convince Godzilla to work with Kong in order to defeat the Scar King. So Mothra does her thing. She ends up getting the two to work together, and then they take on Scar King and the Scar King and his army. So the apes are defeated. Mothra is shooting out sticky webs, and so she's doing her part, and she's really carrying her weight, and then there comes a scene where the Iwi tribe, they end up taking off gravity, taking out gravity, and then they get into this big old fight. It's the special effects are cool, but unfortunately, the Scar King and Shimo end up making it to the surface through the portal. I know I'm missing out on a lot of little details and steps, but I actually kind of want to freewheel this this discussion. So I actually did enjoy the kaiju fight above ground. I think they ended up in Rio de Janeiro, or some coastal beach city, and then they end up having the fight. Shimo ends up freezing the air, and then freezes just about everything. But anyway, you see Godzilla and shooting off his atomic breath, and he's basically holding his own against Shimo, while Kong tries to fights off the Scar King. So eventually Scar King loses the important part of his whip, which ends up loosening the crystal that he used to control Shimo. The crystal is basically destroyed, so that Shimo ends up now turning on the Scar King. King Kong and so eventually King Kong, I'll just call him Kong in this case. Kong ends up seizing trapping Scar King. Shimo blasts him with ice, with her ice breath, and then Kong just pounds his frozen corpse into the ground, basically ending the Scar King. And then Godzilla ends up melting all the ice in the sky with his atomic breath. So the fight is concluded, and then Kong and Shimo end up going back to Hollow Earth. The humans return to Earth, and Jia even assures her adoptive mother that they'll always be together no matter what. And then Godzilla ends up going back to Rome to rest, having done the fight. So yeah, but anyway, my thoughts overall is that thinking back about it, I actually did enjoy the movie enough that I really hope that there's a sequel. But I don't really need to go to the theater more than once to see it. And as far as I can tell, the movie is actually doing pretty well. It's actually more than recouped its as far as I can tell, it's actually more than recouped its operating budget. So now I think the movie is going to be safe enough that if they may go with a sequel, although I wouldn't be too butthurt if they decided not to. I think that this was a pretty good one, but if I think I think the movie's fine. The movie is okay. It's not the best, but it's good. It's okay. It's pretty good. So now, do I think now? Unfortunately, I do have to compare it with the last effort with Godzilla with Godzilla -1. Now When I think about it, since they had incorporated human characters, I have to actually do a comparison between this movie and then a movie like Godzilla minus one. So um I think like that Godzilla minus one still blows any movie, any like monster movie out of the water, and this was really no exception. So what more so like what that movie did extremely well was that they conveyed Godzilla in such a terrifying as a terrifying presence, and that he was actually kind of the centerpiece of that movie rather than like and but then like the human relationships that were formed in that one, it I actually ended up caring about those characters. I think the characters were actually well done. I thought there was a really tragic backstory that was well, not even a story. Yeah, it was a tragic story that the fighter pilot character had as a result of having to face Kong, but he couldn't. And it totally made sense. I actually ended up caring about the humans because they really did a great job of like fleshing those characters out, and the interactions, the chemistry was amazing. So I think the next time that the next movie, I think they need to like bring focus back to the monsters, and if they're going to like bring incorporate like human characters again, I think that the story has to be of caliber. It doesn't necessarily have to be tragic, but but make the characters care about each other and in relevance to what's going on in the world. So I think that it's a new world and people are adjusting. I mean, rather than just making it such a memeable thing, just develop something that actually matters. I think the mother daughter relationship was pretty good. I thought that was really I personally I thought that was really sweet, and the trapper character was pretty cool. I mean, he had a really cool personality. I think the DJ guy, Bernie, he's a pretty cool dude. I think like I think like they just need to spend a little bit more time to mature if they're going to do another like human interactions, because otherwise I I think like the best thing that happened besides the kaiju fights was essentially the communication, the chemistry between the animal characters. They did such a great job, like communicating with each other, and again, didn't need any sort of speech. They just needed to like kind of, like, they just basically told through actions, and that's what it meant. That's what I ended up enjoying a lot. So, um, great. So like great work on mastering the relationships between the animal characters. So yeah, but anyway, that's it from me. I hope that you enjoyed the spoilers. If you like, again, if you like what you saw here, please do consider liking the video and let me know what you enjoyed or you didn't enjoy. If you want to see more awesome content, please do subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. All right, that's it, everyone. Thank you very much, and hang loose.